Mike Rees.
Good afternoon, Gav.
Thank you so much for agreeing to be interviewed by a random member of the public.
Well, thanks very much for the invite.
How are you today?
Busy, it's been a busy day at work, but I found time to come in, so...
Yeah, I really appreciate it, thank you. I know you're a busy man, and a busy man's the person you should always ask if you want something done.
Exactly, yeah.
So what have you done this morning?
Just catching up. I was out most of the day yesterday down in Salisbury doing some visits down there to various licensees and members of the public, in between trying to fit in quotes and stuff for work. But this morning I've just been catching up with the stuff that I missed because I wasn't in the office yesterday, so which is a bit of an issue when you're campaigning.
Yeah, you've got a busy couple of weeks ahead of you, haven't you?
Yeah, it's 15 days left. That's the way I keep
Nearly there, nearly there. I'll just explain why I'm doing this. I've followed your campaign with interest. I like the way you roll. I voted for you last time and I intend to vote for you again. I know that because you're an independent, you don't have access to the same kind of funds as the political candidates. So this is my contribution to your campaign.
Thank you.
And it's really nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, yeah.
So and I do love a bit of independent journalism.
Yeah.
So I identify with the whole independent thing. Could you please, to camera, explain what the PCC role is for people who might not be clear about it?
Okay. Just putting it into the most basic terms, I suppose. The PCC is the voice of the people. Not the voice of the government, the voice of the people. And maybe sometimes that gets confused along the way. You represent the people, you hold the police force to account, the Chief Constable to account, and you're there to reduce crime and deliver an effective police service within Wiltshire, as well as setting strategies and managing budgets. There's a lot more to it, but in a nutshell, that's what the PCC role is.
Okay. It's about having one foot in the police world and one foot in the public world.
Very much so, yeah. But, ultimately you represent the people, but a good knowledge of policing is advantageous.
And are you able to explain why you think the role should be non-political?
Just looking at the last 10 years, certainly within Wiltshire, you've had a Conservative PCC with no disrespect to Mr McPherson. I think, as I said earlier, you should be working for the people of Wiltshire and not working for the government. I think if you're politically aligned, you're going to get politically influenced in how you manage things. And I don't think that's good for policing from what I've seen over the last 10 years.
Okay, I mean there's a political element to the making of law, isn't there? But I agree that there shouldn't be a political element to enforcing it or in your role. It all gets very confusing. Policing,
is supposed to be without fear or favour and policed in a neutral manner. And I don't think with a politically aligned PCC, and bear in mind that most PCCs in the country now are Conservative, I don't think that bodes well for policing. And I don't think the people can be properly represented by someone who is basically kowtowing to their employers.
Right. I did notice in 2012, which was the first PCC elections, there were a lot more independent police and crime commissions at that point.
There were a few more independent PCCs, certainly Avon, Somerset, Dorset, Gloucester, which are immediate forces. They were independents, but as a result of the last election, they're no longer there.
So should you win this, you'll be the only one?
I'll be in a very lonely place, yeah.
Along with the eight Labour PCCs and one Plaid Cymru, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Who are not in the Association of Conservative Police and Crime Commissioners.
Which is a strange organisation.
Well, I can't find anything about them online, actually. But apparently they exist.
And does that itself tell a story?
Well, I don't really understand why there needs to be one. I don't like it, but... Anyway, we won't talk too much about that sort of thing. So, what do you do these days, Mike? You've been, after 30 years in the police force, you've been out for 7 years. What are you currently spending your time doing?
I've led a very busy life. Well, I've always led a busy life, but I retired in 2014, so I've been gone 7 years now. And literally on the Friday I finished in the police service on the Monday. I started 2 cleaning businesses. One was a specialist cleaning business, one was construction sites. So I went from dealing with terrorism, drugs offences, drug dealers on the Friday, to cleaning the toilets on a building site. Have you ever been in the toilets on a building site?
I've cleaned some toilets in my time, but not on a building site.
It's not a pleasant place to be. And so I built those 2 companies up with a friend of mine, and so we were employing 40 plus staff within a relatively short space of time. I've now sort of left the construction site cleaning business and just gone into specialist cleaning, dealing with hoarders, vulnerable people that are struggling to manage.
Yeah.
And I've also started a furniture recycling business to help those people in low-income families as well, which kind of sits hand in hand with the cleaning work we were doing. I've got a couple of other companies which I have an interest in, but have little involvement.
Right.
I'm heavily committed to boxing. I've got a boxing club at Malmesbury. That takes up a lot of time, especially now the shows are starting. Had our first show down in Kent at the weekend. So we get to travel around the country taking the boxers to shows.
Right.
So yeah, that's a big commitment in itself. And I run a children's cancer charity.
Fat Boys?
Fat Boys charity, which helps children suffering with cancer and leukemia. And of course I've got my family life as well. So trying to fit everything in is difficult at times, keeps me busy. I like to be busy, but should I be elected, then obviously I'm going to have to make some decisions as to who's going to run the business and issues like that. But certainly the one thing I wouldn't want to leave behind is the boxing, because that is my passion.
Yeah, and that gives you a chance to work with young people as well, doesn't it?
Very much so, yeah, and do some good work with them. You know.
So all these things are going on, and they're not things that you just started up to publicise yourself for the PCC role. Is your charity been going for 22
years? Yeah,
or
we
something
started
like that?
in 1999, and it's just grown from very local charity to we now help children throughout. We've helped thousands of kids throughout the UK over the years. So we've made a success of that as well. And I don't need to go out trying to prove myself. I've got nothing to prove to anyone.
Right.
And I'm not going for this as a stepping stone to another job or as an ego filler. I don't need to prove anything to anyone.
You just think you're the right man for the job.
Exactly.
And I had lots of other people agree.
And whoever gets that job, it's a massive task. You know, policing.
It won't be fun, will it?
No, policing is not in a good state, and it will be a hell of a challenge for whoever gets it. But I just think I stand a better chance of changing things for the better than a politician. So, in the absence of anyone else going, I'll stand as an independent.
Yeah.
I made the decision to go for it.
I just like the broad range of your experience. You know, your CV looks great. Not that I've actually seen your physical CV, but it sounds great. Do you think your years out of the police force have given you a different perspective? So one of the things that's said about you, he's an ex-copper, you know. Even I'm guilty of saying once a copper, always a copper. Yeah. But you must have a different perspective after 7 years being out.
Yeah, very much so. I think when you're in the police service and you're the things you see day after day after day, it does make you quite narrow-minded. And since I've been out, I think I've become more liberal.
But not fluffy.
Definitely not fluffy. I don't think I'll ever
much
be
fluffy about you, is there?
No. And I do see things from a different perspective. When there have been times where I've needed police involvement, the response sometimes has been very good, most of the time hasn't been. And as an ex-cop, that's really disappointing to see, because I do still care. You know, I've still got friends within the police service, and I know the stresses and strains they're under, and I know the difficulties the management has. But it still reflects. It kind of reflects on you as well as an ex-cop. The service that people get. So I do genuinely care about the service that the police deliver. But I've also got a lot more experience now of seeing things from the other side and having a much more balanced view, I think.
I like it when somebody's had quite an institutionalised sort of career and then they come out and do something else. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's an asset being an ex-policeman, but it doesn't make the job easier, does it? How do you think you'll manage conflict and conflicting demands and reactions to unpopular decisions? You know a lot of police, but you aren't, just because they're police doesn't mean you all can agree with each other, does it?
Absolutely not. And there are going to be decisions which police officers and staff may not like. There'll be decisions which the public won't like. But you can't please everyone all the time. I know that. And life's not fair sometimes.
It really isn't. But then whoever said it was?
Yeah. And things are difficult. So I think I've got an advantage in that. If you're going to set a strategy, a policing strategy, or lead an organisation, I say lead because the chief constable leads, but you have an influence over which way the police are going.
Yeah.
I think they're more likely to follow you if they know and trust you.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's been if they can see what you're trying to achieve, they'll put that extra effort in. I'm not sure there's that same connect between a politician and the police officers and staff.
Right.
Certainly within Wiltshire, I don't think there's ever really been that connection between the PCC and the officers and staff.
Just going to pick up on something you said there. So I've noticed a comment that you actually end up having to make quite a lot, is that operational matters are the business of the chief constable,
Very
aren't they?
much so.
And not the business of the PCC.
That is not the business of the PCC. But I do think it helps to have an understanding of policing and what is good policing, what's not good policing. So you can't have the wool pulled over your eyes.
Yeah.
Someone without that police experience would probably just go with what the chief constable says. Now, I'm not there to argue with the chief constable, but if I don't think that's right for the public of Wiltshire, or they're not getting the service they would expect, I will challenge it.
Good.
And make no mistake about that, I will challenge it.
I believe you. Okay, so what kind of PCC will you be? Will you remain as accessible as you are now? Should a PCC have a public-facing personality or a personality at all?
I mean, I went out yesterday and I'm not interested in going to places where I can have my photo taken, and I say that I did have my photo taken yesterday, but it's not about that for me. I genuinely want to go out and speak to people and find out what their perception of policing is, and I did that yesterday, and it wasn't a good response.
Where did you go?
I went to Amesbury and Salisbury yesterday.
Because crime rate's quite high in Salisbury, isn't it?
Well, it's got no police station, which doesn't help. Whoever made that decision, and I understand there were political decisions behind that, from what I'm told, which weren't in the best interest of the people of Wiltshire. And this is where the political influence comes in again. And had that been, for example, me in that room, there was no way I would have closed Salisbury Police Station.
Right.
And I'm totally against the closure of police stations. And, I understand there are issues in making use of those and the costs involved, but there will be an alternative. Every problem, I've always gone by this maxim, every problem has got a solution. You've just got to be creative.
Yeah. I like that every problem has a solution.
Yeah. And so I'm looking at, I've got ideas around what could potentially be done in the best interests of the local communities to keep police stations.
I agree with you about police stations, because there's so many reasons that a person would want to go to a police station, including in the middle of the night when something bad is happening, and also the transport of people that are arrested in the middle of the night. If you piss in a corner and devices, you shouldn't have to have some police come from one area of the county to take you to another area of the county, just to keep you in overnight and then, give you a smack down, not literally, and send you off in the morning.
I think it's a really important part of a local community to have a police station, and I don't think that's an old-fashioned view. We keep told we're working smarter now. Well,
oh no, don't say that. Working smarter.
Not as far as I can see, and not as far as the people I'm speaking to in the public can see.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of disillusionment within the police service, with the officers and staff, and there's quite a lot outside it as well. And like I say, whoever gets elected has got a massive task.
Yeah. So talking about police stations and not thinking that's an old-fashioned view, you know, everybody wants that kind of like, has this romantic view of a sort of Dixon and Dock Green sort of situation, don't they? But, you know, we've moved on a bit from then, but then you don't want to get rid of the things that actually work.
It's what people want.
Yeah.
You know, from
Even people who aren't that into the police would agree that it's a good idea to have a police station in your own town.
Yeah, it's what people want. And you know, I went to a chief constable's briefing on Monday, which was interesting. Perhaps a little bit rose-tinted. From, you know, obviously I've still got friends within the police service, and you get that side of the story, which isn't good. Then you get the chief constable's side of the story, which is very much rose-tinted. So that's probably over-egged, but I've probably exaggerated to a degree this side as well.
Right.
So I would imagine the reality is probably going to be somewhere in the middle. Somewhere in the middle. And things aren't good. So I forgot what the question was now.
I think I did too. I just want to touch on briefly, there's a new crime plan, isn't there? There's a new, our Prime Minister's talking about a new...
Oh, what, beating crime?
Crime plan that's been described by some senior police officers as weird and gimmicky.
I think that's the polite description of it. Yeah.
Well, we're being polite, aren't we?
Yeah.
I'm not particularly keen on somebody who uses phrases like throttling the life out of drug gangs and you know, putting people on ASBOs in chain gangs. That sort of, is that really what people want to hear?
I saw some ridiculous ideas in that plan. I saw some ideas which were just old, regurgitated ideas. And if the government really want to sort policing out, they need to start investing. Not just in the police within Wiltshire, within the police nationally, within the justice system, within the support networks in the community. All this banging the drum, we're beating crime, you're not.
Right.
You're not. Just don't try and fool the public, because they're not buying it. And I think the public would prefer you to be open and honest.
Straight up.
And that's what I intend to be if I was elected.
You mentioned money, so it's a large budget that you're going to have to manage, isn't it? And that's made up from government and also raised from people's council tax. Does the experience you've had with your business, are you going to bring that to managing quite a complex budget?
Obviously, you know, I mean, I was, with my business, probably just short of £1 million business. That's not profit, trust me, that's not profit. But the turnover was around about the £1 million mark. To me, it doesn't matter whether it's £1 or £1 million.
Right.
It's how you spend it, and it's making sure that you're making best use of the money that you have available. You know, if you need to invest in something which is going to make things easier, better, cheaper, or more cost-effective, then invest in it. Okay. Yeah, so that has.
So you'd review some of the expenditure a bit?
I'd certainly review every contract. I think that is a given that you've got to review every contract. So I believe that some haven't been reviewed for some time.
Right.
And every bit of expenditure needs to be reviewed. So they're not. I know. You know, I've been in the service 30 years. I've seen hundreds of thousands, if not millions of pounds wasted at times, and people get away with doing that. And I know it's still going on to a degree, and so you need to cut out that squandering of money and divert that into the community policing, into extra officers, into support networks. You know, I want to work with the chief constable to give them as many police officers and staff as I can,
right.
Because that's going to benefit the public and make them happier.
What did your predecessor get right, and what did your predecessor get wrong? That's Angus McPherson.
Yes. I don't think he was. I don't think he had a good enough relationship with officers and staff, and certainly looking at morale within the service is not good. Whether that's down to Mr. McPherson or other senior managers, I don't know. You know, but it's certainly true that the officers and staff are not happy,
right.
and morale is low. I don't think had a really good connect with them, which I think is important if you're going to take people with you. The closure of police stations, and certainly Salisbury police station was a massive mistake. Closing police stations, mistake. Putting police officers into council offices, mistake.
Oh, yeah, I really don't agree with that one,
No.
because people who want to access council services don't
Yeah, I was
necessarily
going to say,
want to...
not just from a police perspective, but from the council
Yeah.
perspective. I just think it's a ridiculous idea, and always have done. So that's certainly something I would look at if I got elected. Things he got right, you know, I don't mean Mr. McPherson in disrespect. You know, it is a difficult job. He did a lot around domestic abuse and supporting that within the community, financially and, you know, otherwise. And I think he actually did a pretty good job there with that.
Yeah,
from what I've seen.
did cast my eyes over his last report,
Yeah.
and I did notice that there was some work to do with that in there, so good.
So he's done pretty well with that, I think.
Okay. So I know that the mental health of police officers is one of your priorities.
Yeah.
The workload is a big factor in that, isn't it? Given that, what can you practically do to help?
Talking from experience now, when you're travelling to work, I remember doing my service, every day you would travel to work and wonder, what am I going to be faced with today? What am I going to see today? What's waiting for me when I get there? You know, it's a really, really stressful job. It's shift work. It's dealing with violence situations, dealing with traumatic situations involving children, all sorts of different things, sudden deaths, suicides, murders. You know, it is a very well, I don't think there's not a job like it. You know, there isn't a job like being a police officer. During my service, if you went to something that was traumatic, you were lucky if you got a leaflet through dispatch with TRIM, the Trauma Incident Management, and I never used to bother.
Even if you did, you wouldn't ring them, would you? Most people.
People deal with it in their own ways, and if I'm going to be perfectly honest, you know, police officers were seen. It was quite a macho occupation. If you dared to suggest that you had mental health issues or weren't feeling right mentally, that would be seen as weak by managers, by colleagues. I'm going back some years now, and it might affect your promotion prospects or going on to another department, because you would be seen as potentially a liability. And you know, I'm not glossing over that at all. That's the truth. You know, I'm not making that up. However, things have progressed significantly.
In the last couple of years, particularly around the post-traumatic stress stuff.
Yeah, things have progressed significantly, and the understanding has got a lot better, but it's still far from perfect. And you know, I've been engaging with people like Green Ribbon Policing, who are looking for a mandatory standard of mental health care within and understanding within policing. A guy called Steve Carr, who does mental health first aid training.
Right.
Those sort of things need to be introduced, and that's something I would definitely be looking at doing, as well as, you know, if someone is suffering with mental health issues, they do need the right support. And I think sometimes you can look at, well, how much is that going to cost? But it's an individual's well-being that you know.
But also a police officer with mental resilience is less likely to make poor policing decisions. It stands to reason, doesn't it?
You know, and at the end of the day, you're a human being. You might be wearing a uniform or whatever, but at the end of the day, you're a human being. You still get affected the same as anyone else, and you're probably dealing with far worse situations than anyone else will ever see in their lives. And I think people sometimes forget that about police officers.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, I certainly would be focusing on that, and you know, looking in the community as well. Post COVID, it's going to be horrendous, the mental health
Even
issues.
so going back to Angus McPherson's last report as well, which was pre-COVID, that in there it said that police officers, 20% of the things they deal with are to do with public mental health.
And I think, well, they are already. I think police officers will be working a lot more closely with mental health teams. And again, that's one of my things where we can salvage police stations is to perhaps co-locate not just mental health teams but other departments as well, from council.
Right.
You know, where we can interact more closely and to the benefit of the local community.
Yes.
So that's something that's on my mind. Obviously, I can't significantly look into that because I haven't got the job yet. But
well, let's just talk as if you have.
Yeah.
Because I'd quite like you to have the job.
Yeah. It's talking about I'm realistic. You know, in this county, it's going to be very difficult with a strong Conservative vote. I think, you know, with the supplementary voting system.
Yep.
If I could get into second place and get into the next round, then I think we might have a good chance, and probably the Conservatives will have a fight on their hands.
I think it's a two-horse race at this point. But
well, not according to, no disrespect to Dr. Brian Matthews, but Matthew rather, he says he's the only true opposition to the Conservative, which...
Well, they did come second last time,
I'd like to prove him wrong on that. He's a nice, don't get me wrong, he's a nice guy, he's a nice bloke, I've got nothing against him. But,
well, we're not here to slag the others off anyway, are we?
And I would like to at least prove him wrong on that.
Yeah, and you're sort of man who wants a fair fight, so there won't be any dirty tricks going on from your angle or hopefully anyone else's. What's your view on the policing over the pandemic? I've looked at it and I thought, this is light touch policing, which I've quite approved of because there's been a lot of fear and you don't want riot vans on the corner. But part of me also wonders where they've been and what they've been doing.
I think the government made it very, very difficult for
people to do things rather than not do them.
To police the pandemic. You know, because there was one rule for them.
Oh, that's the difference between law and guidance, isn't it? That people have found so difficult to...
Yeah. There was certainly one rule for them, one rule for others, and that just makes it impossible to police them. And from what I understand, and I know that HMIC have referred to Wiltshire several times in the way that they, Wiltshire Police, in the way that they conducted their policing of it, and were very complimentary.
I think it's been all right, actually. And also I attended a Kill the Bill. I really hate that title. I attended a Kill the Bill demonstration in Swindon. And I went for the purposes of filming it objectively. So I wanted to sort of look at the social distancing of the protest, which was great, and also the way that it was policed. Because sometimes you have to go and actually see for yourself because you can't necessarily believe what you're being told. And I found that, and that's on YouTube. And I thought the policing was very good, actually. Very, very polite and friendly, but then again, you know, nobody kicked off. Yeah,
and, you know, this new police and crime sentence bill with all these new proposals, I don't see what that's trying to achieve. You know, I'm all for peaceful protest, and I like the way that... And no police officer goes out to a peaceful protest looking for a fight. I can tell you that now. You know, peaceful protest, light touch policing, brilliant. I don't think anyone has any issue with that.
You think the powers are there already to deal with these things,
I do. They're just not exercised properly. Or they're certainly in sentencing, they're not applied properly. And I don't know what this is trying to achieve.
Which brings me on to another part of the police crime sentencing and courts bill, which is part 4, which deals with unauthorised encampments, and that I find that very worrying because there's a very populist view out there that Gypsy, Roma and traveller people should all stop travelling and settle, and that rings massive bells for me. And there are ways of dealing with it. I understand that the police generally, so I've been looking at friends and families of travellers, did a freedom of information request and about attitudes of police towards criminalising trespass and towards traveller sites, and it's my understanding that the majority of police in Wiltshire would like to see more sites, as would anybody with half a bit of understanding about it, and are not in favour of criminalising trespass. I wonder if you've heard anything about negotiated stoppings. I do understand that, you know, there can be friction and tension between settled communities and some traveller communities, and obviously it would make much more sense to have more sites for travellers with facilities, but do you know what negotiated stopping is?
Yeah, negotiated stopping is used up in Leeds, and it's been quite successful. I have read a bit about that, and it's basically where they have dedicated sites for a certain number of days a year where the travellers can camp peacefully. They'll put skips, toilets in for them. So we haven't got the issues of leaving mess and foul waste, which is what causes problems with the local community.
It's not all travellers that do that, but some.
Yeah, but those are what cause it. That's what causes a lot of the friction. And they do get a bad reputation, the travellers. I've got some traveller friends that no different than anyone else I know.
Absolutely.
You can't hide the fact that they do cause problems at times.
Some do.
In local pubs. Certainly recently at North Wiltshire, I know that there was those issues. But we need to try and work together to.
So, if you got the position, would you be interested in having discussions about the prospect of negotiated stopping?
Very much so.
Because those sites are looked at, and they're a little bit away from communities, so they agree on sites and they're not always the same sites that are used. And it saved Leeds a fair bit of money. The council and the police.
It saved them, I think, something like £250,000.
So it's a good financial decision as well.
So that's certainly good for the council as well. And it's definitely. I mean, I'm interested in looking at any good scheme throughout the country, but certainly that's one I'd picked up on. To try and avoid the issues that we've had, both from the traveller's perspective and local community.
Absolutely.
So, that's certainly just one of the things I would look at.
Great.
If elected.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you do your boxing, and one of the things that you enjoy about your boxing is that it involves mentoring young people.
Yeah.
I know it's not just guys. I know that girls need good mentors as well, but there's a real need, isn't there, for some young guys to just have a decent older bloke to look up to sort of take under their wing, to teach about life, really. And some lads don't have that, and there's consequences to that.
I mean, you say it's not just boys, it's girls as well. We do get quite a lot of female boxers in the gym now.
Yeah.
And when they arrive, the first thing that happens is, before they even get in the gym, is these are the rules.
Boundaries.
No swearing. Treat your colleagues with respect. No messing about. Any messing about, you're out.
Okay.
And what we say goes. And they've probably never had those sort of boundaries. Quite often they come from dysfunctional families. They've probably never had those boundaries read to them in that, and some of them are really quite taken aback with it, and don't quite know how to react. But we try to involve them in doing things for the homeless, collecting clothes and stuff like that, just to teach them a more community-spirited way of life, and as well as the boxing and everything else, But
well, the boxing's about confidence and control, isn't
very
it?
Much so. We get, if I didn't get elected this time round, I'd probably look at starting more classes. I'd probably look at winding down my business side and doing more with the community boxing.
Right.
Of like having classes for people with disabilities, the elderly, autistic children, kids who are being bullied.
Okay.
And have much more regular classes and more classes every day. That's my plan B if I don't get elected here.
That sounds like a good plan B. And let's hope you have plan A, and then maybe you can do plan B
Plan B
in a few years' time.
Down the line if
when you've had 2 terms as the Police and Crime Commissioner. Okay. What's one single thing you could do if you get in post to reduce crime in Wiltshire?
Looking at everything at the minute, the community and the police are not working together properly. That's blatantly obvious to me. I think you need to get more cohesion. Well, that's what I've been trying to do. Get more cohesion and more community. We've got to get out in the community. Not in a Dixon and Dock Green style, because those days are long gone. But there needs to be more community policing than there is now. We say we've got it. I can't see it, and the public aren't seeing it. So that needs to.
Well, seeing a policeman is always a surprise.
Yeah.
Isn't
Yeah,
it?
in fact,
It's like,
some-
there's a policeman.
Someone said that to me yesterday. Said I saw she picked up a magazine. It was a policeman walking down the street. So I haven't seen that in God knows how many years, you know. And so I think some easy wins here to win back the public.
Right.
And I fully understand the competing demands of everything that the police get involved in. A lot of those demands come down from the government, and they're readily accepted. I wouldn't be so ready to accept them, because what I'm there for is to represent the people of Wiltshire.
Yeah.
And if I don't think we should be doing that, we
Yeah.
should be doing this. Chief Constable, this is what I think. It's a matter for the Chief Constable whether they make that happen or not. But if they don't make it happen, me as the voice of the people will certainly be saying, you need to look at what
And
you're
you'll
doing.
be able to evidence that as well, won't you?
Right.
Like I see the way that you engage
Yeah.
on your Facebook
Yeah.
post, and you have a lot of interaction on your pages, and you did a survey, didn't you?
Yeah, I
you
did, yeah.
Was it, how many people responded to that survey?
Just short of 1,000, which
1,000
I'm
people.
told
What
is
was the
really-
question you asked for that?
Oh, there was all sorts of different questions.
Yeah, you got a lot of
Yeah.
response. I see all the engagement that you have
Yeah.
on your page, so you've got an instant way of consulting
Yeah.
all sorts of different kinds of people. I see some of those names on your
Yeah.
Facebook threads, and I think, oh, well, you're in with Mike Rees as well, are you? You've got a lot of respect out there from a broad variety of people.
It's because I'm not a politician with a broomstick stuck up my backside.
No.
I'm a normal bloke.
Yeah.
I don't care whether you're a multimillionaire or someone who's got a drug addiction problem or homeless.
Mhm.
You get the same Mike Rees, no matter
Yeah.
what. Okay, I don't judge anybody.
Well, you can see me for starters. Well
And
done.
I thoroughly enjoy it. I don't judge anybody. You know, and perhaps that's something I come from a poor background,
Mhm.
you know, and a council house background. I've lived on council estates when I was younger. And the one thing I really hate is when someone says they live in a council house. No, that will wind me up, you know, because
Yeah, I've got no time for that either.
that's disrespectful.
Mm.
And
Plus the fact there aren't that many councils left, and most of them are housing associations
yeah,
anyway.
So, you know, I'm just a normal bloke, and my life will be good no matter what happens in this election. It is hard work, it is intense campaigning, and certainly this time round has been actually harder than last time. And I'm not going to lie, I will be glad when that...
When it's over, let it be over.
And whatever happens, you know, I'm just going to carry on being Mike Rees, and if you don't like the way I am, don't vote for me.
I love that.
You can give me all the abuse from behind your keyboard you want. I don't care, I'm still going to be me, all right? And,
Good for you.
Yeah.
Couple more things before we wind up. Community support networks. So I do things and have done throughout the pandemic, and a lot of the support networks that people have had and relied on have just disappeared or not been accessible. And you know, there's this big presumption that you can do this online, but a huge amount of people aren't online or are not illiterate, are not computer literate, or do not have the equipment, and it's been impossible to teach them over the pandemic. Will you be looking at support networks for the public as well, like mental health, domestic abuse?
Very much so, and anything that I can do to help that, A, because I'm interested in that sort of thing anyway, and B, because it does help reduce crime.
It really does, doesn't it?
That is what the PCC is there for, is for crime reduction. So why wouldn't you look at it?
Yeah.
And
I'm thinking of groups like Mind, and actually, when you looked into the laws, there were ways of support groups still going ahead. There were particular parts of the law that meant you could have support groups, but because of the fear, I think, it's my perception that people have tried harder not to do things than to do things during the pandemic. But you would...
It's a good excuse not to do something.
It really is. I'm not knocking people for being frightened, but, where is everybody? Some of us have turned up for life. Actually, please don't get me wrong, I'm not here to slag off people that have stayed in, but, I think some services could have stayed operational.
Yeah, and And I do think that just the fact you're staying at home, it changes your view on stuff and does affect you mentally, and you do look at things differently. And perhaps that's had an impact on people not doing stuff because of COVID. You know.
There's still some people out there still frightened who are hardly going outside.
I know. And I think that's going to be a long time before it changes.
Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. Let's be optimistic. Okay, so what would be your priorities in the first week? If you were to get the job, what would you do in your first week?
Make sure I've got someone to look after my business. Within my first week, obviously, getting out and meeting people, and trying to build a team. You know, I've got some ideas around a team, not just within the PCC's office, but also a team of volunteers. Can always be like scrutineers over certain aspects of policing. Okay,
like focus groups?
Yeah, and involving youth in that as well.
Oh, good.
There's lots of ideas, but I think the first week you've just got to be getting to know the people around you.
Okay.
The chief constable, the staff in the office of the PCC. Then I want to get out and meet officers and staff on the ground. For those that don't, because I've been gone 7 years, you know, the vast majority probably won't know me now.
Yeah.
So meeting people and trying to sell your vision. I hate that term, vision.
Well, there's not really a better word, is there? I'll tell you what I heard this morning. Somebody, you know, the phrase parking. I'll park that over there.
Yeah.
I was listening to the radio and I heard someone, I'll park that in a lay-by, they said.
Yeah. Things like
how far can you take an analogy? I think I'll park that on a dangerous junction over there.
I really dislike management buzzwords like getting all our ducks in a row and all this rubbish.
It's all popular stuff, isn't it?
Let's just talk normal.
Yeah, I love the way you talk.
Talk proper like we normally do.
Yeah, no, you talk and you're really careful with your words, and I really like that. And you can spell, Mike.
Most of the time.
I do like a man who can spell. Yeah. And women who can spell, but not in that way. I digress. Okay, so, Team Mike, can you win the election? So, during the election, 31,722, I hope I've got that number right, people voted for you and thought that you could win.
Yeah.
And now you've amassed Team Mike together, so because you are having to fund your own campaign, this time, reluctantly, you've done a GoFundMe thing to raise the money, and you've nearly raised all the money, but also you've got this huge team of people who are delivering leaflets and working for you.
It's just overwhelming that people believe in you that much. You know,
they really do.
To put money into a fund, which I was totally.
You didn't want to do that.
I didn't want to do it. I'll be honest. I didn't want to do it, and I was trying to in the last process. So I'm not going to spend like other political parties do, but my PR team, who were all volunteers and really good people, said, Mike,
you've got to do it.
If you're going to win this, you've got to do it.
Yeah.
And I said, it just goes against everything I believe in. I said, if you want to do it, I'll be a little bit detached from it because I just feel embarrassed about it. But from what I'm seeing, you know, this army of volunteers, people who don't know each other from all over the county, most of them I've never met before, and they're there to support you. And
distributing posters and leaflets.
My son's out driving around it for the third time in about the last week. He's out driving around the county, dropping off leaflets. He'll be glad when it's over as well. And these people are willing to put in the time, the effort, the money for me.
Yeah.
And it is overwhelming. So
at the end of the video, I'll just put up a little thing with the links for the GoFundMe and for your Facebook page and your website in case anybody wants to get involved. Okay, I think we're nearly done, Mike. What are you doing with the rest of your day?
I might have some leaflets to deliver in Bradford, depending on whether I got an email back. Is a guy over there that was kindly offered to deliver some. If I don't go in there, I'll be back to the office to crack on with because I'm way behind now, and worryingly so with my business. So that's my day sorted.
We're nearly done.
And boxing tonight, of course.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Thank you very much. It's so good of you to come and see me today.
No, I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Gav.
Yeah, no, I've enjoyed interviewing you. And I'm really delighted to say that you're exactly what it says on the tin. It's always good to know that.
Well, it depends what it says on the tin, doesn't
It just says Mike Rees, independent candidate for Police and Crime Commissioner and
Yeah.
generally good bloke.
Yeah.
So thanks ever so much, Mike. Have a good day,
Thank
mate.
you.
Okay, cheers. Bye.
Thank you.